If you're wondering why my bookshelves are a little empty behind me, that's because I'm going to be participating in HRCYED 3.0. I've gone through my entire physical TBR looking for books that'll work towards this challenge so that I can accomplish my own personal goal of cutting down on the amount of books on my physical TBR. If you don't know what HRCYED is, it stands for the hardest reading challenge you'll ever do, and it was created by Stephanie, who goes by Cordy here on YouTube. Essentially, the challenge is to complete an entire blackout of a bingo board full of reading prompts, where every square is its own mini challenge. And this must be done within the span of 1 year. Every year it starts on July 7th, which is Cordy's birthday, and ends on July 6th of the next year. There are a few different ways to play HRCYED this year. I think there are 4 different ways. If you're curious to know about all the different ways to play and all the rules, I'll have Cordy's account linked in my description below. Since it's going to be my first year participating though, I'm just going to be doing the no-nonsense version, which is the classic old version of HRCYED. The basic rules are that you are allowed to count one book for 2 prompts as long as they are not in the same bingo square, and rereads do not count if you've read it within the last 5 years. So I'll probably be looking over here a lot just because I have my laptop open with the Storygraph challenge. If you guys are curious about that, this is the one I'll be using, just because it makes it way easier to track the books that I'm going to be using, as well as all the different prompts. The first prompt on the bingo board is choose your party, and essentially what we're doing here is assigning the main characters of each of our books a D&D class. I've managed to fit in 3 books from my physical TBR into this prompt. The first one is The Lies of Loch Lamora by Scott Lynch, which I'm going to be putting as a rogue class. Next is The Shadow of the Gods by John Quinn, which I've already gotten about 100 or so pages in, and I will be putting towards the fighter class. And the last one from my physical TBR is Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid, which I'll be putting as the Bard class. The last one I have so far for this prompt is Full Moon by Jim Butcher, which I'm going to be putting as the Wizard class since Harry Dresden, the main character, is a self-proclaimed wizard. So far, I am missing 1 book for this prompt, but I'm not too worried about it just because I think it'll come about naturally as I read throughout the year. The next square on the bingo board is the periodic table of elements, which was surprisingly difficult to find books for. The first book I found was Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh, and that book will be going towards the element of silver. Next, I have A Taste of Golden Iron by Alexandra Rowland, which I'll be putting as the element of gold. Even though this book does have 2 elements in the title, I can only use it towards 1. Next, I have Chlorine by Jade Song and Iron Widow by Ziran J. Zhao. And the last book I've put towards this prompt is Tin Man by Sarah Winman. Next is the familiar term square, where we're looking for words like mother, daughter, son, brother in the title of the book. The first book I've put towards this prompt is The Brothers Karamazov by Fyodor Dostoevsky. And this one is probably my most ambitious pick of the whole lot, just because, yeah, it's a pretty thick book, and I don't think I've read a book this big in... I can't remember the last time I read a book this big. I think the last one was The Lord of the Rings by J.R.R. Tolkien. So this is definitely going to be a challenge all on its own. And this is the only book I managed to get from my physical TBR for this prompt, so all of the other ones I kind of had to go looking for. I found The Tiger's Daughter by K. Arsenault Rivera. Next, I have Notes of a Native Son by James Baldwin, which I've been meaning to get to for such a long time. I also remembered The Way of the House Husband by Kosuke Ono that I've been wanting to read for such a long time, and I feel like I'll be saying that a lot throughout this video. I feel like this challenge is honestly perfect for mood readers like me who will mark something as TBR and then forget that I had marked it there and then just let it sit there in the void until I eventually come across it. There are genuinely so many books on here that have been sitting in the void of my online TBR waiting to be read, and I completely forgot about them. The last one that I put towards this prompt is Ink Blood Sister Scribe by Emma Torres. Regional books is one that I'm sure I have books for, but I haven't really looked into too much yet. From my physical TBR, I was thinking of Love in the Time of Cholera by Gabriel Garcia Marquez and The Kite Runner by Khaled Hosseini. I also have 1,000 Splendid Suns by him that I've been really wanting to read. The other books I was thinking of is Things Fall Apart by Chinua Achebe. I'm not too sure if any of the books I mentioned though really fit into what this prompt is asking of us. So if any of you have any suggestions, please leave them down in the comments. That would really help me out for this particular square. The next square is one that was fairly easy for me to fill out, and that is Choose Your Curriculum. For this prompt, we're going back to school and assigning books a subject. The first book I put towards this prompt is Game Changer by Rachel Reed, which is going to go as Jim. And yes, I'm putting this in because I'm feeling major FOMO from not being in on the heated rivalry loop that's going around lately. Next, I've put Code Blue by N.R. Walker, which I'm going to be putting as music since the main character is a singer. This is a bit of a risky one though, just because it is the second one in the series, and if I don't end up liking the first book, then I will have to change that around a little bit. For art class, I put The Abduction of Seven Forgers by Sean Dixon, and I actually forgot that I managed to find a physical book on my TBR for this prompt, which is Pale Fire by Vladimir Nabokov. And I'm so sorry if I'm butchering books throughout this video. I'm butchering books. I'm so sorry if I'm butchering authors' names during this video. I'm really trying my best. I think this one is going to be perfect for a English literature class. And the last book I put towards this prompt is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, which I'm going to put as theater. Next is the road trip square, and here we are going around to different places in a country and picking books from each of those places. Since I'm Canadian, I'm going to be doing books from different provinces. I'm not too sure if Cordy has stated this in the rules or not. I know that the books must be set in the area that you're reading them for. So in my case, the books have to be set in the province for which I'm reading them for. However, the books that I've picked while set in the province that I'm reading it for do take place in fictional cities or towns that the author has created for the story. Personally, I think that's completely fine. It's still technically taking place in the province, even if it is in a fictional town. For example, the first book I put on here is Still Life by Louise Penny, which takes place in Quebec, but it takes place in a fictional town within Quebec. One book that I feel like is required reading for a Canadian, which I still haven't read yet, is Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. This book takes place in a fictional town in PEI, and I know my sister has a physical copy somewhere, so I'm definitely going to be borrowing that. One book that I managed to find on my physical TBR is Wild Love by Elsie Silver, which takes place in BC. And then I have Here by Heidi Wicks, which takes place in Newfoundland. And the last book that I've put here is Fifth Business by Robertson Davies, which takes place in Ontario. If any Canadians are watching this, I'd love to hear your recommendations for more books by Canadian authors. The next prompt on the bingo board is the shortest one out of all of them, I think. It consists of 2 prompts, the first being Bookception. We have to find a book that mentions another book. Obviously, I won't be able to tell whether a book mentions another book until I read that book, but as a sort of placeholder, because I've been wanting to read this book for quite a while, I've chosen The Secret History by Donna Tartt, just because I have a feeling that this book will be mentioning other books. And the last prompt for this square is to read the book within the book, which I obviously haven't picked yet. The next square on the bingo board is the Not So Secret prompt. These are prompts that were given out monthly for HRCYED 2.0. So since I wasn't able to participate in HRCYED 2.0, I'm really happy that I'm kind of getting a taste for it with this square. I haven't assigned any books to most of these prompts just because they're a bit more spontaneous. For example, the first one is to read a book outside, which I'll probably just end up naturally doing. There's also the crafty book prompt, which is to either find a book with a craft on the cover or to read a book while crafting, which is also something that I naturally do anyways. I usually just put an audiobook while I crochet, so that'll be pretty easy for me to do. There's also the in motion book, where some sort of motion has to be happening on the cover, or you can read a book while you are physically in motion. So I'll probably just end up reading an audiobook while I go to the gym. And there's also the last acquired book prompt that I haven't put anything towards. Cordy herself said that this doesn't have to be at the start of the challenge. It can just be whenever you decide to pick up that book. So for now, I'm just going to leave that one and spontaneously decide when I'm ready to read a book that I recently purchased. Other books that are going towards this square that I did pick books for, though, is the book with a punny title, which I've put Full Moon by Jim Butcher. Next in this square is the full name book, where we have to get a first and last name in the title of the book. And here I've chosen to double up with Daisy Jones and the Six by Taylor Jenkins Reid. Next is the Stop Procrastinating prompt, which is one that I have quite a few books I could pick from. I decided to go with Lonely Castle in the Mirror by Mizuki Sugimura. Next we have the duplicate title prompt, which is to find a book with 2 or more books that have the same title and read one of those books. So I went with Still Life by Louise Penny. The next prompt is to find a missed childhood read. I decided to go with Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. Next on the not so secret prompts is to read a book with a title that features one of the colors on Joseph's Technicolor coat. For this one, I've decided to go with Code Red by N.R. Walker. And the last one for this square is to find a book that we were influenced to read. Since I find most of my book recommendations from social media, I feel like this one will be pretty simple. And I'll probably leave it till the end, and any book that I haven't already doubled up on, I'll just fit it right into that slot. And the last one for this square is the last name is a first name book. So we have to find a book where the author's last name can be a first name. For this one, I've decided to go with Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen, since Austen is also a first name. And because this is a book I've been wanting to read for a long time, so I might as well fit it into the challenge since I'll be reading it anyways. Okay, so the next square we have is the cover styles square. I haven't put any books towards this prompt yet, just because I feel like it'll be pretty easy to find books with different cover styles at the end of the challenge, especially when I might have a few books that I haven't doubled up on yet and can just easily put into that space in the bingo board. Next up in the bingo board is titular counting, where we are starting with a title of 1 word all the way to a 10-word title. I've managed to get quite a few of my books from my physical TBR into this square, starting with Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. As you can see, I'm not quite halfway through yet. This is 4 years worth of reading. If you need proof that I'm a mood reader, this is it. And I don't know why I'm struggling so much. This book has proven to be a challenge in of itself to finish, but I am really enjoying the story and I do want to see where it goes. So HRCYED is going to be the challenge that forces me to finish this book. Next, for a bit of a shorter read to kind of balance out the longer books, I've got Animal Farm by George Orwell. For a 3-word title, I have Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. For a 4-word title, I've gone with Anne of Green Gables by L.M. Montgomery. For a 5-word title, I've got The Shadow of the Gods by John Gwynne. For a 6-word title, I have The Empress of Salt and Fortune by Nhi Vo. For a 7-word title, I have Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher. The 8-word title is the only one that I don't have a pick for yet, so if you guys have any recommendations, please leave them down in the comments for me. For a 9-word title, I have Campfire Cooking in Another World with My Absurd Skill by Agakishi K. And for the 10-word title, I have How to Get a Girlfriend When You're a Terrifying Monster by Mary Cardno. Next is a square that I find super interesting. It's the character to author square. Essentially, we're creating a chain with 3 books where the character's name in the first book becomes the author's name of the second book, and the character's name in the second book becomes the author's name in the third book. It's actually way easier to plan this out than it is to try to explain it out loud. So I started with Jane Austen by Emma, which then links Ink Blood Sister Scribe to Emma Torres, which then links to The Eights by Joanna Miller. Next, we have the Shihitori square, which is a little similar where you're linking books to each other. This time though, we're going to take the last letter of the title of a book, and then the next book that we link it to has to start with that letter. I started with The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins, which ends with the letter S. And the book I linked it to was Shadow and Bone by Leigh Bardugo. Then I doubled up with Emma by Jane Austen, which ends with an A, which linked it to Assassin's Apprentice by Robin Hobb, which ends with an E, which then allowed me to double up on Elantris by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, so the next square is the HRCYED mashup square, which is probably the most customizable one of the bunch. You take one prompt from HRCYED 1 and one prompt from HRCYED 2.0 and mash them together to create a sort of new prompt. So the prompts I've decided to mash up are the genre challenge and the creatures challenge. My plan for this is to pick a book that features a creature and then match it with a genre. For example, right now I have An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, which is a vampire book, but is also classified as a horror book. And then I have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black, which features the Fae creature, and also is a fantasy book. And then I have A Master of Djinn by P. Del G. Clark, which features the Djinn and is also considered a historical fiction. And then as another option that might replace An Education in Malice is Chlorine by Jade Song, which I could be doubling up on, and that features a mermaid and is tagged as a horror book. So far I'm missing 2 books for this prompt, so if you guys kind of get the idea I'm trying to get at and you have ideas, I'd love to hear them out. Next is another one that was very difficult, and this one is to find books with a number in the title from 1 to 10. For a book with the number 1 in the title, I have One Piece by Ichiro Oda. This is a book with 3 volumes in it, and I'm already up to volume 3, so that's the one I will be counting towards the challenge. For a book with 2 in the title, I went with Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. I actually struggled quite a bit to find a book with 3 in the title, but I eventually went with The Devil Makes 3 by Tori Bovalino. For a book with 4 in the title, I have 2 picks. The first option I have is Four Squares by Bobby Finger, and the second is The Big Four by Agatha Christie. For a book with 5 in the title, I went with The Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett. For a book with 6 in the title, I have a few options. There's Daisy Jones that I talked about earlier, but since I have it doubled up in another space, I think I'm going to just leave it there. Also on my physical TBR is The Sixth Extinction by Elizabeth Colbert. And there is also The Atlas 6 by Olivia Blake that could be an option for this spot. For a book with the number 7 in the title, I am going to double up with The Abduction of 7 Forgers by Sean Dixon. And the book with 8 in the title, I'm going to double up with The Eights by Joanna Miller. For a book with the number 9 in the title, I'm going to go with Gideon the Ninth by Tamsin Muir. For this prompt, I'm missing 2 so far. It is the book with 10 in the title and a book with a random number in the title. The one for the random number, I could easily go with 1,000 Splendid Suns, which I have on my physical TBR but not with me at the moment. Next is probably the square that is most likely to lead to my defeat in this challenge, which is the Rainbow of Words. Here we have to get colors in the title of the book. I started with Code Red by N.R. Walker. For orange, I have Priory of the Orange Tree by Samantha Shannon. For yellow, I've put The Yellow Wallpaper by Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and conveniently my sister has a physical copy of this in her room, so I'm probably going to end up stealing that as well at some point. For green, I've put Green Rider by Kristen Britton, and this is the part in my planning where I realized I was putting way too many fantasy books in this challenge, and realistically, am I going to be able to get through that many fantasy books in the span of a year? I don't know. I don't know if that's possible, but we're going to try. For blue, I've put Code Blue by N.R. Walker. For purple, I've put The Color Purple by Alice Walker. For pink, I put The Men with the Pink Triangle by Heinz Hager. For white, I put White Nights by Fyodor Dostoevsky. For black, I went with Black Sun by Rebecca Roanhorse. For silver, I'm going to double up with Silver in the Wood by Emily Tesh. And for gold, I'm also going to double up with A Taste of Gold and Iron by Alexandra Rowland. Next on the bingo board is Animal Families. And here we are trying to get books with different animals on the covers, but they can't be from the same animal type or animal family. So I started by doubling up with Pale Flyer because it has a butterfly on the cover. Next, I picked Assassin's Apprentice, which has a deer on the cover. Also from my physical TBR, I decided to pick Dungeon Crawler Carl, which has a cat on the cover. And I've decided to double up with The Fifth Elephant by Terry Pratchett because it has an elephant on the cover. And then I decided to double up with Tuck Everlasting, which has a frog on the cover. Next on the board is the Biome Square, and I've kind of been struggling with this one. We have to find books that feature different biomes on the cover. The first one that I managed to find on my physical TBR is The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson. Okay, I had to look through my bookshelves again, and I did find other books that might work for this prompt. The first one is The Name of the Wind by Patrick Rothfuss. And then I have two other books that I might be able to fit for this prompt, but I'm not sure if they're too similar, so I'd really like it if you guys let me know in the comments. The first is The Brothers Karamazov, which kind of features a city landscape, which Cordy did say counts for this prompt. And next is The Rainfall Market by Yu Yeong Guang. I'm debating whether or not I should count both of these books towards this prompt because they both kind of feature city landscapes, but The Rainfall Market has a more urban landscape while The Brothers Karamazov is more historical, so I don't know if they technically count as the same thing. In order for this prompt to be completed, I need to find 6 books, so I'm hopeful that as I read throughout the year, I'll naturally find books that'll go into that space. Otherwise, I'm really gonna have to look around to find books that'll work for that. Next on the board is the Remix Square, which is essentially just reading retellings. From my physical TBR, I got Malice by Heather Walter, which is a Sleeping Beauty retelling, and Cinder by Marissa Meyer, which is a Cinderella retelling. I also plan on reading Gwen and Art Are Not in Love by Lex Croucher, which is a Arthurian retelling. And then I have Bonded by Thorns by Elizabeth Helen, which is a Beauty and the Beast retelling. And then I have An Education in Malice by S.T. Gibson, which is a Carmilla retelling. Now we have the Food Pyramid Square. In the Food Pyramid Square, we are getting books with different food groups on the cover. The first one I went with was Legends and Lattes by Travis Balderi, which I will use for drinks. Next, I'm doubling up with Campfire Cooking in Another World with my Absurd Skill for protein or meat. Then I decided to go with A Widow's Charm by Caitlin Paxson for vegetables. Next is the Mother Nature Square, where we have to get different weather on the cover of the books. So I decided to double up with The Way of Kings by Brandon Sanderson for cloudy. I have The Name of the Wind. It's hard to see, but it is windy on the cover because the grass is bent at an angle. The last book from my physical TBR that I'm going to be using for this prompt is Happy Place by Emily Henry, which is sunny because it features a sun setting in the background. And the last book I have decided for this prompt is The Rainfall Market by Yu Yong Guang, which is rainy. I think I'm missing about 3 books to complete this prompt. Again, I'm just hoping that I come across covers with weather phenomenon on them as I read. If not, I am gonna have to go digging for that. Next is a really fun square. It's the It's Your Birthday square, where every prompt is revolving around aspects of your birthday. The first one is the birthstone book. Either read a book with a title, cover, theme, or plot element that matches your birthstone. I'm born in February, so my birthstone is an amethyst. I ended up picking Mistborn by Brandon Sanderson, which I feel like really matches the color of an amethyst. Next is a book that was published in your birth month. I decided to double up with Two Can Play by Ali Hazelwood. The next prompt is to get a book that embodies your Western zodiac sign. I'm a Pisces, so I went with Watermoon by Samantha Sato Yambao. Then we have to pick one that matches our Chinese zodiac sign. I went with Blue Horses by Mary Oliver. This one was probably my favorite one, which is the Birth Flower book. My birth flowers are violets and primroses. And as soon as I read Primroses, the first book that came to mind was The Hunger Games by Suzanne Collins. This actually turned out perfectly because I was planning on doing a reread of the entire series before the Sunrise on the Reaping movie comes out in November. The only thing though is that this is technically against the rules for me to include because I've read it in the last 5 years. So in order for me to count The Hunger Games towards this challenge, I'm going to need to complete a side quest and get the reward of counting a book you've read in the past 5 years. If you don't know what side quests are, they are monthly additional prompts that QWERTY releases in order to get rewards to count books that wouldn't normally be allowed to be counted towards the challenge. The side quest this month that would allow me to count The Hunger Games towards this challenge would be to read a book with an alliterative title. I'm not too worried about completing a side quest just now though, because there is some time before I start reading The Hunger Games, and I'm pretty sure the side quests can be completed at any time throughout the year as they're revealed, so I'll probably just wait around to see what the other side quests are and see which one will be easier for me to accomplish. The last 2 prompts for this square are the Birth Tree book and the Name Meaning book, which is unfortunate because my birth tree is the ash tree, and my name is Ashley, which means ash tree as well. And I can't count the same book within the same square, so I'm going to have to find 2 different books for these prompts. So far, the one I have for the Birth Tree book is by Ash, Oak, and Thorn by Melissa Harrison. And I don't have any book in mind for my name meaning just yet, so I'm gonna have to look around for that. Next is the Backlist Author Books, which is reading from authors that we say we're always going to read and then never get around to. The first book I put towards this prompt is The Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien and The Secret History by Donna Tartt. The rest of the books I haven't decided on yet, but I do think it'll just come naturally as I'm reading throughout the year. Next, we have the I Must Endeavor to Acquire These Creatures square. For this one, we have to pick books that embody different types of Pokemon. For a dragon type, I'm going with The Priory of the Orange Tree. For dark, I'm going with Gideon the Ninth. I'm going to use Percy Jackson and the Lightning Thief for electric. And finally, for a water type, I'm going to go with Watermoon. Next, we have the Anthology of Authors. The goal here is to find an anthology book with more than 7 authors, and then read that anthology book as well as 1 book from at least 6 authors that are featured in the anthology. The anthology that I've decided to go with is In These Hollowed Halls. The first author from this anthology that I'm going to read is M.L. Rio with If We Were Villains. Next, from Olivia Blake, I have The Atlas Six or Masters of Death, which I'm undecided between. Next, I'll be reading The Devil Makes Three by Tori Bovalino, Your Blood, My Bones by Kelly Andrew, and Madam by Phoebe Wynn. The last author I'm reading from this anthology is Lane Fargo, and I'm undecided between 2 of her books as well, which is The Favorites and They Never Learn. The last square on the bingo board is Second Chances and Hidden Gems. This is the one square where DNFs do count, so I will be taking full advantage of that. The only book I have towards this prompt so far is The Spell Shop by Sarah Beth Durst. I was 50% in before I DNF'd it, but I am willing to give it a second chance. Okay, so that took way longer than I thought it would, but there you have it. This is my strategy for HRCYED 3.0, and my plan is to release one video at the end of every month documenting my process. So if you guys are interested, I love it if you stick around and see my progress throughout this challenge. I also post all about reading, writing, and cozy hobbies, so if any of that seems like it's up your alley, I'd love it if you could hit follow, and hopefully we will see each other in the next video. Bye!